Hey, thanks for turning off everybody in these front seats. If you just look underneath your chairs for the free gift, you want a free car. Anyway, my name is Doug Stein. I'm the CEO of PPE Advantage in Chicago, and we're here today to talk about a little bit of true crime, a little bit of fraud in our importing industry, some things that probably had an effect on your business through the pandemic. And we just kind of want to go through and show you as we have built this coalition to try to raise awareness for the fraud and the nefarious behavior that went on during the pandemic. So I'd like to introduce Rob Williams, also Tim Morgan, and we are kind of the spearhead of the organization PPE Fraud Coalition, and we have a little presentation for you. So we're going to start out, hit it, Renata, with a CNN video that I worked on with Steve McLean, where we were exposing some massive fraud on nitrile gloves that were coming in from Thailand.
This rundown industrial area on the outskirts of Bangkok is the hub of a new trade that's making a few people very rich while putting millions of others at risk. These are bags of discarded medical gloves, many filthy dirty, confiscated by the Thai Food and Drug Administration in December. It says they're part of a global supply chain aimed at countries worldwide desperate to buy medical-grade natural gloves amid a worldwide shortage that will take years to ease. One of the customers who thought he was buying the real thing was Florida-based businessman Tarek Kirschen.
We start getting phone calls from clients completely upset and, yelling and screaming at us.
Kirschen was one of many customers of a Thai company called Paddy the Room Trading Company.
These were reused gloves. They were washed, recycled. We don't know what they were, where they came from. Some of them were dirty. Some of them had blood stains.
Kirschen says he sent the gloves to landfill and notified the U.S. FDA in February. But this is just one case. In the middle of a pandemic, Paddy the Room had plenty of willing buyers. And the U.S. continued allowing the shipments into the country according to import records examined by CNN. Ziskin's company was another looking to cash in on the lucrative business.
You guys were seeing dollar signs.
Yeah, 100%. We saw dollar signs. We also we had legitimate medical customers who were literally begging for this stuff.
Ziskin's company, AIRQUEEN, paid Paddy the Room more than $2.7 million for 400,000 boxes of medical-grade nitrile gloves, reassured by glowing inspection reports purportedly carried out by a reputable third party. But that inspection company tells CNN those reports were forged.
Open them up.
The shipment was independently inspected when it arrived in Los Angeles. Most of the gloves were actually lower quality latex or vinyl packed into nitrile boxes. Many others were very clearly soiled and secondhand.
Not fit for use in a hospital.
Not fit for use by anybody.
Ziskin's shipment sat for months in an LA warehouse, so we sent an expert and our camera to see for ourselves. Douglas Stein has spent 30 years importing PPE from Asia and has been tracking fraud and scams in the nitrile glove industry since the pandemic began.
But you can see the way it's packed. They're just clumps, like somebody just took handfuls and stuffed them in the box. These were washed, definitely. This one is completely brown, discolored. This is nitrile, but you can tell it's been through a washer and a dryer. And it's changed color due to the heat.
Ziskin's shipment of counterfeit soiled gloves came in fake boxes of the legitimate Thai brand Sri Trang, which says it has nothing to do with Paddy the Room. Kirshen's gloves were branded Sky Med, a company the Thai FDA says is, quote, for sure fake.
To me, the fact that these companies were never blacklisted is shocking.
Emails provided to CNN show that back in February, his company did inform U.S. Customs and Border Protection that Paddy the Room was sending substandard and used medical gloves to the U.S. Yet import records show that 28 containers totaling more than 80 million gloves were imported to the U.S. from that same company after Ziskin's warning was sent. It's unclear where most ended up or if they've been used in a medical setting.
The Department of Homeland Security is investigating Paddy the Room, but acknowledged to CNN that fake medical products do reach the U.S.
I think all of us would love to get to a point that not a single counterfeit, dangerous good entered the U.S.
In March, Ziskin's company also informed the FDA, which that same month acknowledged that Paddy the Room was using fake safety documents for its shipments. The FDA did not alert concerns about Patty the Room until August, 5 months after they were tipped off. It would not comment on the ongoing investigation. But in any case, so desperate was the need for PPE that some of the normal checks on imported nitrile gloves had been temporarily waived.
There was just no other answer. That opened the floodgates for all the nefarious behavior.
The FDA told CNN that to help ensure the U.S. has enough gloves during the pandemic, it does not intend to object to the distribution and use of patient examination gloves that lack full safety paperwork, as long as they meet standards and don't create an undue risk. In reality, there are no routine checks on gloves arriving into the U.S. unless a company has been flagged. CNN attempted to reach out to Patty the Room and its partner company, but they did not respond to questions. The Thai FDA raided Patty the Room in December last year, but did not succeed in shutting it down.
How can that happen?
They just kept moving around and created a new fake company. Once being shut down, they would move to another location.
It's not just Thailand that has a problem. Law enforcement officials say similar scams are common throughout Asia.
Now, 2 other companies told CNN they'd also received unusable gloves from Patty the Room, but the truth is we don't know how many fake or used medical gloves have entered the U.S. during the pandemic. Ziskin went to Thailand to try to get his money back, but was charged with assault and kidnapping after a confrontation with a glove salesman. When Thai police produced no evidence against him, he was allowed to leave the country, though Thai police tell CNN the investigation is not closed. As for all those gloves in the LA warehouse, they were finally seized by federal authorities 5 months after Ziskin first raised the alarm. Scott McLean, CNN, London.
But that was basically just showing, a very, very small portion of one fraudulent company in Thailand that was repacking used gloves, nitrile medical gloves, that had been imported from China after they'd been washed and cleaned and then repacked into medical grade boxes to ship into containers into the U.S. And over 28 containers from that company alone made it into the U.S. distribution channels. So you may ask how this affects you or how it did affect you. I think probably in this industry, probably the biggest story in the beginning of the pandemic was sanitizer was a big issue. Masks were a big issue. And those quickly settled themselves because there was ability to go in and find more production. I think every tequila brewery company in the U.S. and every whiskey company and vodka company started making sanitizer, and that quickly filled the void for supply and demand. But with gloves, it was a different story. So how the wheels fell off in the U.S. when the pandemic started was PPE, masks, gowns, medical gloves, vinyl, all those things were pretty much a vertical import industry. The big companies like Cardinal, McKesson, Medline, Halyard, Kimberly-Clark, those guys controlled pretty much all the production coming into the U.S., and then sub-distributors were granted authorization to sell to other end users. That model fell apart 100% and just collapsed when the pandemic hit, which opened up the floodgates for people like regular importers like myself and Rob and Tim and many, many others to actually go out and use our importing skills and our backgrounds to go find PPE to bring in to help shore up that supply. So that kind of opened up the floodgates in the beginning for PPE fraud to become very criminal and nefarious right from the get-go. So in the beginning, the big fraud in the United States was 3M masks. But that was quickly handled and tapped down by 3M because they have a really good control process, and it's pretty easy from their carton standpoint and their distribution to be able to pinpoint where those masks came from. And so while that lasted a few months, it was quickly handled. But then the nitrile glove, the medical nitrile glove situation came up, and it was a much bigger problem because there was finite production in Asia, because production lines take about a year to build, and nobody was able to build those factories quick enough. You need an enormous amount of land, water, electricity, people, and then you need to buy the machines, and the machines are made to order. So there's always going to be about a year of a problem before supply was going to be able to meet demand. So During that time, almost every link in the chain became a fraudulent opportunity for criminals, whether it was from banking to LLCs, to escrow issues, to data mining, whether it was whether they were exporting fake gloves, counterfeit gloves, used gloves. An entire network of criminality became really, really prevalent, and people, distributors, importers reaching out were taken advantage of. So everything from falsifying testing, certifications, and export documents, and videos, it just became a real mess in the entire industry. It just basically collapsed. Countries like Vietnam and Thailand became cesspools for a lot of this nefarious behavior. And China was actually feeding used gloves, defective gloves, improperly made gloves into these companies so they could be repacked into nitrile medical exam gloves and shipped out of the country. There was also a big void in the U.S. because they waived, most medical gloves require what's called a 510K. And a 510K is a rigorous process where the gloves are tested, and they have to have lots of biological tests, biochemical tests, and also ASTM tests in order to be able to be imported into the U.S. The U.S. waived that requirement because they knew there wasn't going to be enough production in the United States, coming into the United States to satisfy the demand. Remember, when the pandemic hit, no one knew whether it was contaged by touch, and so lots of people started gloving, right? A lot more people. So we went from a country that was importing about 18, 19 million boxes a month to a need of about 60 million boxes a month overnight. And that became the big problem and opened up the door for fraud. So it was an enormous amount of thefts. A lot of importers sent their deposits over, and people ran away with the deposits, or they kicked the can down the road and didn't even ever send gloves for months and months and months, or they raised the price in the middle of production. And this happened everywhere from China, Thailand, Korea, Indonesia. And unfortunately, as a foreigner, there's absolutely no way to recoup that money, even through their legal systems. If you're not there to defend yourself, or you're not there to go to trial for it, they rarely do anything to a local citizen against a foreigner. So it's been very, very difficult. And tons of people have lost their business and their livelihoods. They owe a tremendous amount of money to other people. And so as a result, we formed this coalition. So with that said, I think that's about all I need to say about it. I'll introduce Tim Morgan. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, my name is Tim Morgan. My company is International Sourcing Group based in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been importing a variety of goods for well over 20 years. I lived in Asia for about 6 years, so I understood what was needed, what the safety nets were around importing. And when the pandemic hit, my customers were just demanding gloves. And so I went out to a trusted network in Asia, and then they ended up having to go to agents. And normally there were protocols in place before money gets transferred. We do rigorous testing of a factory and do on-site visits. None of that was possible. So we had to kind of jump into a void and make leaps of faith. And in a couple of cases, it worked out fine, where money was either returned or we got gloves. But then in a couple of spectacular failures, we got nothing. And I had to go over to Vietnam and spend 3 weeks in a quarantine hotel just to be able to sit down with somebody to figure out what my options were, because we were getting no feedback. So ISSA is really helping us kind of have a bigger partner behind us to help raise the profile of this, because as Doug said, as an individual, you have very few options over in Asia, especially as an American. And the American government over there, we were working closely with the embassies over there. They were very helpful, but they were also limited on what they could do because of legal treaties, and they don't want to overstep their bounds. So we're still in the process. We're on millions of dollars of other people's money, and it all happened so fast, and it's now taking we're at about 20 months since the money was initially sent over, and we're still in the process of trying to get it back. Even money, we know where it's at. We have the bank account numbers. We've gotten confirmation that the money is still there. We can't get it repatriated. So we're having to fight in court for that as well. So, and we're hearing that story over and over again. So, you know, I'll let Rob explain where he's at, but, you know, our story is just one of hundreds that's out there. So, and I'm really appreciative of everything that's going on right now.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, I've been over here just chomping at the bit to get in here. So thank you so much for everybody coming out. And Doug and Tim, you really described the situation. R.L. Williams Company, we're a provider of facility services based out of North Carolina. We cover the U.S., we cover Canada. So we've been in business since '96, and you know we're a little bit different because we provided gloves to all of our customers, right? And then the pandemic hit, and guys, we've all been affected, supply chain, one way or another with the pandemic. But gloves in particular, it was very strange. So we had supply that was no problem for years, and so all of a sudden, in the middle of it, the faucet completely turned off. So, and this is early in the game, right? Where running out of product is not an option. Now, we've all experienced different outages throughout the pandemic, but early on, so there was a lot of pressure to, one, keep continuous supply, which was really important. And then this demand that these guys talked about, it doesn't do, I mean, y'all calmly describe, it was insane. It was absolutely crazy, the ask for gloves in all these pandemic parts. So what we had to do, and so what happened is these countries, it's the only place you could go. We had very little U.S. production, like none at the end of the day. So the countries they mentioned, that's where you had to go. So it's caused by COVID. And then what happens is the countries and the demand just didn't even come close to the supply. So you had so many criminals. Story after story. How many do you want? You want, how much time do we have? So I'll give you a couple, right? So we vet these out. So what happened is these characters are hiding in these countries behind COVID because guess what? You can't go into the country to do the normal vetting processes that we always do, right? So everybody does their very best under the conditions to get good supply, in which we did. So I'll give you two examples. So container number one coming in. Now, first of all, getting container number one on the water was an act of God. But you can imagine, right? So it's finally on the water. So the phone's ringing, great, it's on the water, everybody's fired up, great, it's coming in. Then it hits the port. Then it sits in the port and everything. So we have people meet the container when it comes in, and everybody's fired up. It's a party in Los Angeles. We open this, we snip the sealed container, open it up, open up the doors. Instead of a full container, guess what we saw? Anybody want to guess? I had 3 pallets of gloves in an empty container. So that was container number one. So then you try to trace the fraud all the way back. And you go, so now if container number 2 is coming in, we're really ready for it. The exact same thing happened. Ridiculous. Opened up, no containers. Those containers are roughly $300,000 a piece. It doesn't take long, guys, to add them quickly. So, he's got to keep me between the lines here. So that was our experience to that point. So what we did was at R.L. Williams Company, we knew that other companies were affected. So I reached out to Tim. And we've been beating our head against the wall for 9 months to try to get gloves or money back, and we all have. So in talking with Tim, we realized how big this problem was for U.S. companies that worked to get PPE for frontline workers, our customers, and then were taken advantage of by the only place you could get it, right? So we reached out and said there's more companies. And we needed more people to join in to have more influence. And more influence is the name of the game. So we knocked on the door of ISSA. And I've come here for years, guys. I've gone to this show for years. I've known these people. And when we told them what we were trying to do and reached out to Doug, they said, we will give every resource that we have. We will get behind this 100%. What can we do to help? So I'm going to give a huge plug to these guys because I know we walk around, we enjoy the trade show and everything they do, but I just want to let you know, as a company, they have your back. It's a big deal. So a big shout out to the ISSA. I can't thank you enough. So as a group, guess what we're doing? We're coming together. We have 50 or so companies that have come together. We have those joint funds together that's approaching $100 million, and we've scratched the surface. With the ISA's backing, because they have great governmental affairs people, it's a plug right there, that we're getting the message together. We're headed to Congress. We want a congressional hearing. We want our government to put pressure on these other countries and these bad actors in their borders. By coming together and doing this group, guess what? We're making progress. There are arrests that are being made. We'll talk more about that. So, and as my father, founder of our country, said, company, not country. George Washington, right? So anyhow, said you got to turn a negative into a positive. So we're going to flip this thing on this deal. The companies that are coming together, we're going to get the influence that's needed, and this is a course of action that we're going to be taking. So we're going to grow the membership, and again, there's no, it's just a group getting together. That's it. And then so also, we want to collaborate with other trade organizations, which we're doing that as well. Again, more influence. We want to look for, again, COVID relief for the companies that are affected, and then also putting the pressures on the government and also on the foreign governments as well. So, again, strength in numbers. And what's gaining? We probably have, what, 4 or 5 members a day that are gaining on this. And then sharing best practices. It sure has been nice not being on an island anymore. I'll tell you that right now. As we've gone through this, and I've talked to other companies who have gone through this, and so we're sharing best practices, which is great. And relief for damages incurred. And then the big mission here is, so this was gloves this time, right? So what's next? What's the next product that gets hit that you have to go to a foreign country to get it? And then transactions go haywire. And then so we want to prevent this from happening again in the future. So again, we're flipping this negative into a positive, and we're going to use it for good. Media exposure has been fantastic. I know we did a video with ISSA, and it got a lot of nice views on it. Appreciate Jeff's help on that. Do you guys want to talk about some of the things that have happened in Thailand? Come on back in. We'll do that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Back on. Yeah, so since the CNN report, there's been a lot of different follow-ups from a lot of different organizations that have reached out and put the pressure on Thailand. So they've made a task force with the government to try to go after some of these fraudulent people. Some will say it's a little bit too little too late, but at least it'll help prevent the next time we have needs like this. So there has been arrests made. People are going to prison. I don't know if people are going to get their money back, but there's certainly a clampdown happening in Thailand. Now we need to move that effort into Vietnam and then finally into China if that's at all possible. So there is arrests happening, and there's pressure being applied to the factories as well, and there's a lot of embarrassment from the countries that are involved in it as well. So we're just trying to make it a bigger story. It's a much bigger problem than people want to admit. Losing money as a business or being duped is embarrassing. You feel like you're alone, you're embarrassed, you're scared, you don't know where to turn. And so that's why we're trying to provide this group where there's kind of comfort in numbers, there's comfort to know that other people have been affected. We've signed up almost 50 companies, and I can tell you we've given them the option to be either active in the group or anonymous. 95% of everyone that's joined has wants to be anonymous. And we get that, and we'll keep you anonymous. But we do need the numbers to make it a big deal, to be able to go in front of Congress and share the meltdown and the stories that happen and how we prevent this from happening again. That's all I got.
I want to share one other anecdotal story about how what we're doing with ISSA is helping. So my legal team in Vietnam is showing the videos to the police in Vietnam, and they're showing them that, you know, you're not fighting Tim Morgan in Cleveland, Ohio anymore. You're fighting a larger organization, and they're putting resources behind it. They're elevating it. You know, we now have the link to Doug, who did the piece with CNN, so that's added fear to them. And so it's gotten them to the table where literally it was almost laughable, some of the responses we were getting from them up until that time. So I finally feel like something's progressing forward instead of just brick wall after brick wall. So this is working, and this is the only, the strength in numbers does help, and elevating it helps.
So,
they warned you.
Hello. Sorry about that. To how to get involved, again, if you go to, we've got a landing page that tells basically the mission and everything that we're doing. And so if you go to the www.ppefraudcoalition.com, that will take you also to the LinkedIn page. And the LinkedIn page is where we have all the companies that are there. And we're going to have conference calls every 2 weeks, again, talking about best practices and the things that are getting accomplished and getting done. So I'd just like to say, for one, thanks again for the opportunity. Thanks for coming out and supporting this and hearing. Again, U.S. companies, this country, the COVID, and what's taken place. You know, again, I think we can all learn something from this and make things better for other companies, hold people accountable, put them on blacklists, not allow them to sell anymore into the U.S. So this is an action group that's going on, and we've got a lot of good things to come. So get on the link and learn more, and I appreciate the opportunity to come out.
Great job, guys.
And thank you, ISSA.